Good morning, everyone, and I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for your time today to join us in today's presentation on mobile elevated work platform safety professionals. The session is made possible through the efforts of the IPAF North American Regional Council in support of our goal to improve the safe and effective use of powered access equipment. Today's two presenters will be myself, Tony Grote. I am IPAF North America's manager. I am also the chairman of the ANSI A92.22 safe use and chair of the CSA B354.7 safe use standard. And I am pleased to have with me my co-presenter, Val Guerrero. One of my favorite people in the world, who is the director of United Academy. He is also the chairman of the IPAF North American Regional Council and also on multiple ANSI A92 committees with us in development of our industry standards. As you saw in the earlier slide, if you would like to have a question responded to by our presenters, we ask that you use the Q&A option on the screen and post those questions, and we'll try to address as many of those questions as we can at the conclusion of today's presentations. So let's begin. Let's try that again. Let's begin. Now we're going too fast. All right, so if you're looking at the screen, I'm trying to frame in your mind that if you were charged with having or convicted of having a safe workplace, would there be enough evidence to convict you? So really, that's really what we're trying to achieve today, is making sure that people understand what it means to have a safe workplace and how you can accomplish that. So if you're a manager, a supervisor, a foreman, safety professional, anyone who's directly involved with workplace safety, today's session should be of great value to you. And more specifically, if you're involved with mobile elevated work platform operations, we believe that this presentation will be invaluable. The presentation's objective is to raise awareness of the needs for companies to develop a safe use program that will support providing a safe workplace for all your employees and anyone who is in that work environment, and to adequately allow you to manage your risk. We'll further address the need and value to add a MEWP specific safe use program to any programs that you may have in place. So worker safety is the goal, but some people need a carrot or a stick to motivate them to taking appropriate actions. For those who are motivated by a big stick, a new appointment of Doug Parker as head of OSHA may be a wake-up call to make safety priority and programs a more urgent need in your company. Those involved in safety don't need any more incentive to providing a safe workplace for their employees. Safety is job number one, can't be a marketing campaign slogan. It truly must be a leading priority and value in your company and through your management. The OSHA General Duty Clause, known as the 5A1, requires that each employer furnish to each of its employees a workplace that's free from recognized hazards that are likely to cause death or serious injuries or physical harm. Any hazard for which a 5A1 conviction citation is issued must be reasonably foreseeable. Recognition of a hazard can be established by OSHA on the basis of industry recognized employer recognition or common sense recognition. So it needs to be something that's foreseeable. And having a person who is qualified with respect to recognize hazard is essential for every business. So now we're going to start talking to you about the details of the Safe Work program, and I'm going to turn it over to Val.
Thank you, Tony. And with that, we're going to move to the next slide. All right. And here, as we move to the next slide, in a little bit technical difficulties here. Okay, here we go. And here we go. Perfect. So looking at the United States statistics, we can read that there are millions of workplace injuries every year. And even worse, year over year, there are fatalities, people that will die at American workplaces. And one fatality, as you know, is too many. Every life of every worker matters. With 50 years of OSHA creation, the mission that they have to safeguard the health and safety of American workers have paid off. We have seen a reduction of around 65% of those fatalities since they start keeping the statistics. But as I said, one is too many already. And what OSHA does is provide regulations for industries. And one of the most important difference between OSHA as a regulator and organizations like ANSI is that the OSHA standards are federal law requirements, but the ANSI standards are technically voluntary and are best practices, right? ANSI standards are considered voluntary, as I mentioned. They are as important because they are a collection of best practices that come from the knowledge from many experts. And what they are trying to describe is a systematic way of doing things that will give you the best outcome. And everybody, including safety professionals, should take these ANSI standards very seriously. OSHA often looks at standard bodies like ANSI. They will look at ANSI for what is the accepted best practice on a safety product or a safety approach, and actually use these practices in litigation. ANSI standards normally will go above and beyond what will be the minimum requirements of the regulation. And these standards, as I mentioned, come from the knowledge and experience from industry experts. I'm talking about the ANSI standards. So it really a pretty good tool when you want to apply in real life the best way to have a positive outcome. So this presentation is going to frame OSHA regulations as the minimum general rules that a company must follow. But we are also going to talk about the ANSI standards, and that's going to give you the best chance to prevent accidents. And with the focus that we have in using power equipment, that's what we're going to talk about as well. So moving to the next slide, we can see some interesting statistics. Talking about construction safety. Even when I told you that fatalities have been on the way down, when you look at the 50-year lifespan of the OSHA organization, construction workplace fatalities have been rising, reaching a 12-year high in 2019, when they increased 5% year over year. And when you look at the information of this slide, it's just trying to understand what type of incidents were those related to these fatalities. And you can look at transportation and fall, slips, and trips as the higher categories, and for the purpose of using equipment, power access equipment to do jobs, we're going to focus on the false category for this presentation. Now, what you're looking at the screen now, it's the compilation of information that comes from an organization that is just dedicated physically to the safe use of power access equipment, and that's IPAF, the International Power Access Federation. So what is the value of these statistics? Well, if you have activities that will encompass working at heights with power access equipment, these statistics are going to help you understand what are the major root causes while people is getting killed when using power access equipment. And we can see here, fall from the platform being number one in fatalities and in number of incidents, followed by electrocution and entrapment. So this chart contains information from 2016 to 2018. And you can see on the screen the link where you can find more details about these statistics, and they are public. You can go and get those reports. And why would you do that? Because you can learn where are the more common incidents that involve fatality, so you can prepare for that. You make a safe plan on how are we going to avoid someone falling from the platform, someone getting electrocuted, someone getting entrapped using equipment, so on and so forth. And key, it's going to be, as I said, how do you make the workers aware of these risks, and what tools are you going to provide them to protect them against these known hazards, right? Now, let's move to the category for what this webinar is. Let's talk about safety professionals. And myself, you know, I started my career in operations 23 years ago in the oil and gas. And after 3 years in oil and gas operations, I moved to safety. In a time in where safety in oil and gas was just maturing, and I'm not saying it's completely mature, but it was way behind what it is today. And that helped me with the perspective, because the last 20 years, that's what I have been doing, just trying to change safety cultures for good. You know, when we hear the statement that Tony read to us at the very beginning, as it was pointed out earlier, many companies will not have full-time safety professionals that will help them manage and develop safety programs. And that's really not good, because it's not going to allow them to control the operational risks. In many cases, what they do is they have workers that are assigned to manage safety besides the regular activities. They do have a main responsibility, but they also, hey, you're going to be the safety champion, or any name that they want to give it, the safety lead. And these individuals with these safety responsibilities normally do the best they can to meet those expectations and help people be safe, be aware of the risk. But as we know, when we don't know, we don't know. If they don't have the right information, they will not be able to help other workers. And that's where IPAF comes in, at least for the safe use of power access equipment. We have tools that can help people, safety professionals, or people in charge of safety, or supervisors, or anybody who wants to learn on how to safely use equipment, on how to properly do so. And you can see some responsibilities that we can forget. As Tony said, there is some legal responsibilities that an employer has, supervisor has, a person that is in charge of safety has. And you can see some of them mentioned here. With that, we're going to move to the next slide, because let's face it, workplace safety can be very broad and complex. Where do you start? Okay, with my experience, let me simplify it a little bit. It's just the beginning of the journey. It's with all the time I have been trying to change safety cultures and prevent accidents. What I can tell you is safety is all about minimizing the possibilities for an incident to happen. And if it happens, mitigating as much as you can the consequences. You don't want incidents to happen. You don't want people getting hurt. But if they get hurt, how can you make that injury the less severe possible? That's why we have personal protection equipment, the last barrier for an accident to happen, right? It's not going to prevent an object to hit a worker, but it's going to minimize the impact of that object in the worker, just as an example. So for every activity that we do at the workplace, having every worker, when they are doing their task, thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to avoid getting injured or getting others injured? It's really critical when you're talking about the scope of safety. And then having a strong communication plan between workers, because, you know, human errors are human. We all commit mistakes. One way to avoid potential deviations to what is planned is a strong communication, because human error is a strong leading cause of accidents. And that is some of the principles of a good safety culture that I want to share with you, and we wanted to share with you here. However, the concept is easier to describe than to implement. Every person at every workplace will have different motivations when I'm talking about the workers. They have different motivations, they have different thoughts at the time they are performing a task, and they have different understanding on safety. How important is safety? Every worker is going to have a different understanding. And there are many best practices that are published on how to improve safety cultures. And they are targeted to reduce the learning curve that you may have as a safety professional. And if you reduce the learning curve on how to improve a safety culture, on make an operation safe, that may help you reduce the number of injuries or fatalities that are going to happen in your operation. And what we are going to focus here is what type of publications does IPAF has that can help you if you are in charge of safety of the people around you, specifically when talking about the safe use of power access equipment. And with that, we are going to move to the next slide that is going to explain that we have a challenge currently in this post-pandemic era with the labor shortage and the great resignation is called this movement where people is shifting what they want to do. You can see there is more job openings that people that don't have a job. Then what's going to happen is you have these employees that are still there that need to catch up for all the work that others should be doing, but there is not enough workers. So now they have double, triple the work. And then those that are coming into the industry, just not knowing how to properly do those activities in a safe way. Add to that experienced workers are retiring. That was already a problem before COVID. We had in the construction industry massive amounts of people really experiencing trades that were retiring, and not enough people coming in to catch up. So a big challenge on how to keep those people safe, both those that are hyper busy because there is not enough labor and they are the only experienced workers and skilled workers, and then the ones that are new to the industry, new to that trade. But in both ways, in any case, if they are going to be using a safe, if you're going to be using a power access equipment, MEWP, if experienced worker or not, if they haven't used the MEWP, they gotta learn how to use it safely, and that's a critical focus that we want to make sure that you have, and that we pass the point across here. Then moving to the next slide. So we have a couple clicks. We're gonna go one back. And OSHA is trying to catch up as well on what can they provide to employers as programs that they can use to keep people safe. And the Safe and Sound program, as you can see here, it's one of those tools that OSHA has published because they gather all these best practices from organizations like ANSI, coming with all these expert opinions on what's the best practice. And OSHA came up with this safe and sound concept, which is, hey, listen, if you focus in having strong management, leadership in safety, if you have workers participating on identifying the hazards and fixing them, right? Then you have the biggest chances to prevent incidents in the workplace. And IPAF is a proud sponsor of this program, and we will continue doing that. And we invite you to get to know a little more about this program because it has pretty good best practices, and you can do that through IPAF as well. When we talk about power access equipment. Now, let's talk about safety from another perspective, the economic perspective. Saving lives, saving people from getting injured should be an enough motivation, but there is an actual angle in where we can see that will companies with a strong safety culture have a economic value added to their operation? And the answer is yes. Yes. Why do I say that? Because companies with a strong safety culture that are protecting their workers as much as possible from having incidents by giving them the training, the tools, the equipment they need to be safe, and very importantly, the authority to stop work whenever it's necessary, when they don't feel safe, without retaliation. You can see here in these statistics that are confirmed, they will save 2.7 times in direct costs for their operation. So their operation will be more profitable if they have a stronger safety culture. So where are these costs coming from? Well, they're going to lose it for companies that don't have a safety culture, strong safety culture. Where is this 2.7 times more cost coming from? Well, they're going to need to replace workers that got injured. They're going to have time loss for those workers that got injured. They're going to need to stop operations and have investigations completed by supervisors and leaders of the organization that will delay the projects. They will lose or damage materials, machinery, property, among other things, right? So what we're trying to convey here is protecting workers from workplace incidents turns out is very good for business, actually. And with that, we're going to pass to this next slide. And in this next slide, what we're going to see is there is different examples of what you can consider near accidents or near incidents. None of these, look at these pictures here. If you take a detailed look, you will see pretty unsafe activities. But these pictures are identify unsafe use of MEWPs that did not result in an accident, and is one of the more challenging aspects of convincing human beings of the importance about safety. Because not every time that someone takes a risk when they are doing something, that will result in an accident. Not every time someone does something like this, that will result in an accident. So then there is a perception that companies with no accidents are safe companies, when that is not necessarily the case. It can be a culture of underreporting near misses like this, not addressing the risk and fixing it, right? And just a statistic probability. just probability, they don't have accidents. They may have small accidents that are not reported, and then all of a sudden, they have a big accident. It's not uncommon to hear that there was a fatality in a company that had never had an injury. How can that be? Is it that their culture was so good that they were preventing all accidents? Or is it that company had a culture that failed to identify the risk and have a system to access that risk? And under-report what was happening, and all of a sudden, just probability catch up with them. So when you are a safety professional, so one thing that you can do, just coming back for a moment to that slide, is, so how do you address this? Because I'm giving you all these provoking thoughts that we brought you today, and you may be thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, we think that for at least for all the MEWP activities, like for any other activity, if you have a good plan on how to do these activities, you are giving your workers the biggest chance to be safe and have a safe operation. But let me tell you something, you don't need to go by yourself on this. And I'm now gonna do a little commercial, just a disclaimer. You don't need to do this by yourself, because there are organizations, non-profit organizations like IPAF, International Power Access Federation, presented to you today, that are reliable resources to assist you. They have experts, subject matter experts, that the only thing they do day in and day out is thinking, how can we be safer when doing operations with power access equipment? The mission of IPAF is safe operations, as I said, and it's all about raising awareness, just like what we're doing right now with this webinar, and supporting any company and anybody that wants to meet the responsibilities on the safe use of MEWPs. So we really invite you to connect with IPAF and learn more on what we can do for you, and all what is related to the use of the proper and safe use of power access equipment. Why? Because a good safe use plan for MEWPs has multiple components. As you can see on the screen, some of these may be familiar to you. If you already have scissor booms, any type of MEWPs in your operation, you may be like, oh yeah, I really understand that I should train my personnel to use equipment. Okay, that's great. But there may be others that are not as familiar to you. Like, do you need to consider the site access? You need to prepare the grounds. How are you going to maintain a safe environment? And those are the type of things that we can help you understand. And Tony will talk about a document that will come out very soon on how the best practice on how to prepare a safe use plan, that if you follow, it may help you. It may help you to get the best practices implemented in your operation and keep everybody safe. And when we talk about safety, again, I was diving onto safe use of power access equipment, but I'm going to go out one more moment, because there is a cliche, right? Safety should be number one. Is safety really number one for your company? Or is it just a marketing slogan to present to your stakeholders? What do you think your employees will say in case they are under oath in an incident investigation? Let us tell you something. When safety becomes the real number one priority, everything you do has a component that is measured of, okay, we achieved the business goal, but was there anybody hurt in the process? Did we allow employees to stop work, and did we capture those? Did we capture near misses? Did we address the risk? When this is really part of the way that things are done in a location or a workplace, you don't need to have this slogan out there published anywhere. That can be perceived by anyone observing those workers do their activities. So just think about that. And what we're going to give you next is we're going to give you some basic components of a safety program. Our intention is not to give you a prescription, but to give you some best practices that we know are pretty important if you are listening and you are trying to know, all right, so what do I need to have on my safety program? It is very well recognized in all the industry publications by many associations that it all starts with leadership, and all start with top guys, supervisors, and everybody on charge of someone leading by example, doing what they say should be done. That is critical because if they are safe, if they are doing safe actions, the workers below them are going to follow for sure. Then we have the reporting system, open communication of, hey, there is a risk. I think there is we need to address this. This is not safe. How the workers have the ability to not only report that, but address the risk themselves and then report that, or if they need tools, materials, equipment, go to the supervisor and feel the supervisor will invest in fixing that risk. That is critical. And having a reporting system where there is no retaliation, when there is no consequence of somebody reporting, it's critical as well. That's a basic element. Now, imagine you want people to be safe at your workplace. They don't know how to be safe. Basic. You gotta let people know how to be safe. For general risk, and we gotta understand training comes in different ways. And as more complex is the risk, the need of more training and confirmation that the worker understands how to be safe doing that activity. As an example, in the case of a safe use of a power access equipment, as the risk is complex and he can not only injure himself, but cause multiple fatalities. You don't only want to give him something to read, a presentation and PowerPoint, but you want to actually take that person, once they understand the concepts of safe use of that equipment, take them outside and make sure that they understand how safely use an equipment. The important to familiarize with every type of equipment and everything that they need to do before they actually start operating, because and understand the consequences of not doing that. So more complex the risk, more complex the training, because you are trying to ensure that they have the necessary knowledge and skills to safely do an activity. That's another basic element of a safety program. And then conducting inspections. As I mentioned before, imagine all the people in different places. They have different motivations. They come from different backgrounds. We can expect that they will understand the message of safety the same. So that's why we are conducting inspections at the workplace to identify, is everybody doing what is supposed to be done to be safe? And if not, how can we coach them, mentor them, fix those risks that are still there? Maybe just human error. Somebody just forgot to address a risk. And that's another very critical element. Brainstorming. If you are the supervisor or the safety person and you think you have the best ideas and only your ideas will be the more effective, that's not the case. The best way to improve a safety culture and have a safe workplace is when all workers contribute with ideas on how to control the hazards. So make sure that you have safety meetings, make sure that you have a way to have the suggestions from workers collected and reviewed. And then we have the hazard controls. Implement the hazard controls. Yeah, you collect all that information, but if you don't do anything about it, then it's like not collecting information. So action is critical for cultures that are safe. Then there is also the need of having a system a plan that is systematically plan, do, act, check. You gotta do safety and have procedures review and communicate it. And what if there is an emergency? What are we gonna do to minimize the impact of that emergency or that incident? That needs to be communicated as well. And I said, we're going pretty fast, but we're giving you some basic elements here that are gonna help you. And as I said right now, the purpose of safety is let's make sure nobody gets hurt, but we gotta understand every activity we do is gonna have a risk, and there is a chance that somebody is going to have an incident, hopefully not, and we gotta do everything we can to avoid that. But in case of an emergency, if we don't have a good emergency plan, the consequence can even get worse. Imagine somebody has a emergency when he's working at heights using a power access equipment. How are you going to rescue them? That becomes really critical, and it can be life or death for that person. And as I said, it's making improvements. It's all about making improvements, because no safety plan is perfect, no safety program is perfect, no safety system is perfect. There can be a way to have healthy feedback coming to the system and keep maturing that safety culture and systems and processes that are in place. And just understanding, especially and generally and specifically, let me talk generally. There is no safety program that can be applied the same for every single operation. If you have a consultant that is coming to you and saying, I have the magic recipe, don't fall in that trap, okay? Every organization and every operation has particularities, and their safety programs gotta be customized to their specific needs. Yes, there are some foundation, we are presenting you some foundational safety elements, but there is gonna be some that are just gonna be customized for the type of organization you are. The same for the MEWPs. When you are talking about using a power access equipment to do an activity, are you gonna work indoors or outdoors? What is gonna be the height that you're gonna be working on? How many people are gonna be there? What's the capacity? This is not a one size fits all, and understanding that concept is very, very critical. And again, non-profit organization, International Power Access Federation, we can help you understand how to safely use this power access equipment, how to prepare the safe plans, and have training programs that can help you as well on that. And with that, I'm gonna pass it back to Tony. Tony, over to you.
Thank you, Val. I think that really what Val has really set up is what we need to do is make sure that we have the foundation, which is a very solid safe use program that applies to your business. And the latter part is really what I'll be talking about today, which is taking a general safety program and customizing it to be specifically applied to mobile elevated work platform operations. This pictorial that you see here actually comes from the requirements in the ANSI and CSA safe use standards for the application of a safe use program specific to mobile elevated work platforms. And you can see all the components in here. A risk assessment. Risk assessment is not specific to mobile elevated work platform use. So it applies generally, but the risk assessment that applies to a mobile elevated work platform takes some specialized knowledge. The equipment selection, site preparation requirements, what training is required for the individuals who are working with this equipment, the maintenance of it, familiarization of these products. So really what we want to do is look at the importance and value of a MEWP specific safe use program, and know that you need to have the foundation of a good safe use program, and then tailor it, customize it to address these very specific products. And if you're not capable or aware of all of the attributes of the use of these products, you may be putting your workers and others at risk. So most of this equipment is easy to figure out. You know, most people will go on to a mobile elevated work platform, aerial lift, and get on it and figure out how to make it move. The real issue is how to make it move safely, how to make sure that your operations are done safely. And the real question that we have for those who are on this call is, are you qualified as an MEWP safety professional to develop an MEWP specific safe use program? So a MEWP safety professional must be aware of and understand how to protect workers from known industry hazards. We identified earlier in the presentations what OSHA had for all industries. And, you know, and those things kind of go every place for all types of industries. But we need to be able to look at what are the really specific incidents that are associated with mobile elevated work platforms, that are the potential hazards that you need to be made aware of. So industry accident data can point out some common causes of accidents related to MEWPs. Today, we're going to focus in on the top 3 causes of lost time incidents associated with MEWP operations: falls from the work platform, electrocutions, and entrapment. So why and how do workers fall from a fully guardrail work platform? So we have falls that are coming over. It's one of the leading causes. How do you fall out of a fully guardrail platform? Why and how do all types of tradesmen, from arborists to painters to windows installers, get electrocuted when working from mobile elevated work platforms? Why and how can a worker become entrapped in a work platform that they're operating, that they have the control over the movement of the machine, but yet there's entrapments that occur? A MEWP safety professional needs to ask these types of questions for every known risk. So while a hazard may exist in the workplace, the proximity to the work, duration of the task, and other factors will identify the probability or risk level from low to high. Further, the severity of the consequences, the impact, must be considered. As the risk level and severity increases, the need to mitigate the risk increases as well. In our example, the work is near an overhead power line, making the risk probable, and the severity is high from electrical shock or death. So we have an adequate safe use procedures to mitigate these risks. So let's look at the issue that we talked about here. What hazards cause a fall from height in a fully guardrailed work platform? So the first thing is what's known as the catapult effect. So here you end up having a work platform on the end of a beam, and if it goes over and has movement on it, there's enough inertia, enough moment that can literally throw an occupant out of the work platform. And you need to be aware of that particular aspect in relationship to boom type lifts and how you're going to mitigate those hazards. We have overreaching. So, this could be, part of selecting the right equipment for the job. But you get to the point where, how close can I get to the equipment? And we have overreaching that can be impacted. Here you can see the application of not selecting the right equipment for the job. So here is a piece of equipment with having a vertical lift going straight up and down. When you need to reach or get up higher, you're not selecting the right equipment for the job. Here you see that they're not following the right attributes of safety, which is on a boom type lift, you must be wearing personal fall protection. Here you can see exiting a MEWP at height without a fall protection program being fully connected at all times. And then we're dealing with human beings. You know, we're too smart to listen to everything. We're too busy, or we just physically are working too many, and we're too tired, and we're not focused and concentrating on the issues. There's a lot of things that can happen. You know, in addition to that, you know, you can have machine malfunctions. You can be struck by another item. There's worker misconduct. So there's lots of elements that you need to consider in your safe use plan. So we talk about electrocutions, a known hazard. The Center to Protect Workers' Rights did a study years ago on MEWP fatalities associated with electrocutions. And while forever we've had some parameters of safe use that say stay a distance away from it, whether it's a minimum approach distance or a defined distance in there, that study of those accidents that occurred in fatal incidents, 50% of the bodies were in contact with the power source. So we have a rule that says stay away, yet we have incidents that show that people are physically in contact with it. This is still a leading cause of hazards associated with this equipment, and we need to make sure that we are doing the right things to protect people, despite the fact that we already know that it's a hazard and we have safe guidelines in place. So IPAF really takes a very conservative position on this when we train operators. We go over and say, if it's a wood pole, stay at least 30 feet away and 50 feet away if it's a major line, distribution line. So we tried to be very conservative and said, if you don't know anything better, stay away from these power sources. However, we get to the point where when we look at the safe use procedures, you know, what are the contingencies that you're putting in place? So when we say stay 10 feet away, how does that apply? How do the workers in the field actually comply with that method of being safe? So safe use procedures are a step-by-step method to carry out the task in consideration of the control measure to ensure that safety. So staying 10 feet away is the control measure, but we need to make sure that we have the safe use procedures in place to follow this. In this case, the control measure is staying 10 feet away with any part of the body, conductive object, or any part of the MEWP. Sounds pretty simple, but we also need to recognize that the MEWP operator is focused on his primary task, whether it's cutting trees or whether it's working on a sign in this particular case. We know that the MEWP is mobile and can be easily maneuvered into an unsafe location. Simply having a controlled measure that says stay 10 feet away is insufficient guidance. You need to have control measures in there. This diagram demonstrates how attempting to stay 10 feet away as a control measure can be violated without proper safe work procedures. Here you can see we have a parameter staying 10 feet away, both left and right, and the scissor lift can elevate into a line. You could take 10 feet away where you park the MEWP, but when it rotates, part of it can extend into that danger area while the worker is looking the opposite direction. So if you don't understand the safe work procedures and make sure that they're communicated effectively to your operators, you have an increased likelihood of the hazard impacting you adversely. So while I'm not going to get into all of the details and read these step by step, when we look at this and saying stay 10 feet away, here's some samples of the safe work procedures that you could put in place. So I'm going to go through these relatively quickly, which is creating an exclusion zone, going over and putting precautions when traveling and all the details of how you apply that. Precautions are not guaranteed, so how do we deal with this? Developing communications and emergency procedures. So you can see that while the work on this was, okay, let's go over there and have a risk assessment, identify the hazard, and come up with a control measure staying 10 feet away. If you don't have the detailed safe work procedures in place, which we feel is missing in many, many applications, people take certain actions, but still don't prevent the risk and hazard from occurring. So developing a safe use plan is a major part of workplace safety. There's a great term used in the A92 standards, which is contingencies, found in one of the stages of the risk assessment, which is the safe work procedures. In my opinion, development of safe work procedures is that most underutilized stage of a risk assessment. The risk assessment results are used to plan safe work procedures, including any contingencies required to carrying out the task. So this animation offers a great visual on evaluating your safety plan. Will your plan provide your workers with answers on how to proceed safely and effectively, or will your workers be left to figure it out on their own and hopefully do the proper actions? Don't leave safety to guesswork. Be a safety professionals that will rely on providing a plan that is clear and easy to follow for your workers. As we showed you in that pictorial of that cloud with the safe work procedures specific to MEWPs, believe me, I've been in this for 4 decades. And when I go to try to create a safe use plan for it, it can get pretty detailed. And as Val also said, not one size fits all. So if you're in a position where you're using a mobile elevated work platform once a year to change light bulbs, or if you're a contractor who is on all different types of job sites and conditions and using this equipment every day, your safe use plan should be different. And to put this all together, IPAF has created a MEWP safe use program guide. And this slide kind of gives you kind of an overview. So we have a guide and we have all the components that are part of it. So here is one sheet that shows you, here's the risk assessment, here's a summary, there's action steps that you need to take. And beyond that, we end up having some information. Oh, excuse me, gotta go back. We have some information which are tools and references to help you create that. And we have those for equipment selection, maintenance, training, unauthorized use, action. So this guide will be on our website, I would say hopefully by the end of this week. And you could go in there and look for the MEWP Safe Use Guide as a tool to help you. So really we think that, again, you need to have a safe use program for everything you do. And we truly believe if you're working with mobile elevated work platforms, especially compliant to our industry standards, you need to make sure that it is specific to the use and operation of mobile elevated work platforms. A tool that's out there is, as we said, we follow the industry standards. OSHA regulations were written in 1970. OSHA regulations for a scissor lift deals with the scissor lift as a rolling scaffold tower. In our opinion, that is not a really good tool to be using to follow safe use procedures for this type of equipment. This particular site is the Secretariat of the Safe Use Standards. Here, take that link and you could go and buy a copy of the standards for both safe use and training for this equipment for $7.95. A very economical way for you to get a copy of 2 industry standards specific to this equipment. So that's your inexpensive tip for the day from us. We also have identified the fact that we need to reach, those people who are out there on their own. So IPAF has opened up a new member category for $99 a year for anybody who's an individual who wants to have access to a lot of our information and tools and access to industry professionals to be able to have dialogue and answer these questions. So again, we're not out here trying to specifically market this, but raise awareness to the fact that if you have a need and you have 10,000 jobs already on your plate, having the tools or assets available to assist you is critical to your success. And we hope that we can be part of that with you. So that is the completion of our presentation for today. Val, thank you for your in-depth overview and your passion on the need from your years of experience on having safe use programs. Hopefully our detailed insight on how to attach MEWP specific safety to that program will add value to those of you who are using this equipment. And we'll now open it up to any questions. All right, so there's one question we have here. It is the lost time incident chart global or North American? Also, does this chart include all groups and types? So I'll fill that one since it is an IPAF information. It is global. So we take information from anyone who feeds in any information of a lost time accident into our charts. Our perspective is that safe use is safe use regardless of where it happens around the world. I would add to that because of the fact that in the US, OSHA requires the reporting of these incidents, we have a very concrete way of looking at annual incidents that are reported through the OSHA FATCAT report, which is fatal incident reporting. So I would say that from a general viewpoint, at least 50% of incidents that are reported worldwide are actually being reported from the US. But I would equally say that the US has the largest number of mobile elevated work platforms in operation in the world as well. So the information does come there and does apply worldwide, but I think it's applicable every place that MEWPs are being used. This is your last chance. If anyone has any other questions, you can pose those now. It says, as of December 10th, 2019, all MEWPs need to be constructed with an automatic swinging gate instead of chains. Is there a cutoff date as to when subcontractors can no longer use chains? So I'm going to answer that question twofold. I don't know, Val, if you're okay with me rolling with this?
Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
Okay.
Take it, please.
So in the design standards, actually the new design standards actually did not go into effect until June of 2020 is when that requirement came into effect. So any machines that was manufactured to the new standard and must have occurred on or after the effective date of June 2020 eliminated the use of a chain guardrail for exiting. And in fact, they additionally now require a tow board over that entrance as well. So the answer is that effective June of 2020, any machines manufactured to the new standard must eliminate the gate, must be solid on the entrance, and must also have a tow board. Any machine that was manufactured to a prior standard has no requirement to be retrofitted. So if you have a machine that was manufactured prior to the effective date of the new standards and has a chain on it, that machine can be used indefinitely until it's taken out of service. And there's no required to amend it or bring it into compliance with a new standard. So hopefully that answers that question.
Tony, I believe there is a couple more questions.
Okay, why don't you shoot one?
Yeah, let me read one here for you. It says, "Hi Tony, great presentation. While doing an other bridge inspection, after the inspector needs to leave the platform to access the bridge bearings. When they leave the platform, we require total tied off. Is this enough?"
Well, the answer to that question is that technically, these machines are not designed to allow exiting at height. However, there is a realization that there are times when when this equipment is the most safest means of accessing some of these areas. Within the standard, there is language in there that says when you do it, you need to perform a risk assessment, identify it, and there are within the standard very defined attributes, requirements on how to do that safely that must be done at a minimum. Most times it says that if you're exiting, it has to be done in conformance with the procedure allowed by the manufacturer. So if you take those things into play, 100% tie-off is obviously one of the things that you would want to make sure that you had in place. But I would read the language in the standard specifically on the issue of exiting a MEWP at height, and make sure that all of the requirements stated in that section are addressed.
That's great, Tony. And let's see if we can squeeze this last one in because we're on time. It says the new standards do apply to older MEWPs. However, are we required to replace the existing ANSI manual or use the manual that was recommended standard during the manufacturing time of the unit?
Well, that's a touchy question to answer, but I'm going to answer it as clearly as I can. The new safe use standards apply to all equipment in operation. So we have a design standard and a safe use and training standard. And the safe use applies to all equipment in operation, old and new. So if you have a old ANSI manual of responsibility, it's going to have old safe use and training language in it. So technically, it doesn't apply anymore, and that can be removed from the machine as it no longer applies specifically to the safe use and training requirements. The ANSI manual of responsibility was actually removed as a requirement in the standards, and that was removed based on an appeal known as commercial terms violation. And that means that the ANSI manual of responsibilities is exclusively produced by the Secretariat, who has copyrights to the standards. So you couldn't have an equivalent option of where to provide that. So because it's a single source, it could no longer be required by the standard to be compliant because it's a single source for that particular item. They are still being produced. And at this point in time, it is a decision of the owner of the equipment whether they're going to put the manual responsibilities on them or not. There are some manufacturers who are still putting the new manual of responsibilities. They're still being produced, but just not required in the standards. And if a manufacturer is providing it, technically you are required to maintain whatever they provide you as operation manuals on the machines. So hopefully I've answered that as technically correct as I can. I would say from my perspective, it provides good guidance for the requirements that are out there. And my recommendation would be to supply them on the equipment, but that's a should as opposed to a requirement that you shall. All right, So that concludes our presentation. We have no other questions. We are at the conclusion of our time. I actually ran over a few minutes. Here's my contact information that's on here. Below, you can see that link to the resource library for the A92 standards and safe use guidance. If that's not there today, I would suggest to you that it will be there shortly. Again, you have our contact information. So if there are future questions that we can assist with, that's what our job is. So we conclude. Val, thank you for your time and contribution. Thank you all for your attention, and we'll see you all at our next session.